edit this part out because I'm just being fancy. Hello everyone, my name is FenReads, and welcome to what could be like a new setup thing if I decide to keep doing this. So today we're doing my January wrap-up because I'm doing booktube a lot more now, so that's pretty neat. So, let's get started. I only read like 5 or 6 books, which is fine. I wasn't really expecting to read much this January because like I'm busy with university and stuff, and a couple of these books that I've read are for university because, you know, gotta read for my reading classes. So the first book that I read this month was A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I loved this book, and I know it's like a trend to hate on Sarah J. Maas and be like, oh, well, her writing's bad and like it's super cheesy and stuff, but like I loved this book. I thought it was fun. It was super like Beauty and the Beast style, which I found kind of weird. That was just the kind of vibe I got from Tamlin and Feyre. It was very like, oh well, he's this like big brooding like tortured soul that she's trying to fix, and she was this hunter who was lost in the woods, and like it was very cliche like that, but at the same time like it was made very like pretty and mystified and really fun to just read, and I had a good time with it. Like I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I still had some problems with the fact that I hated Tamlin. I did not care about his character at all. I found him really annoying, which makes a lot more sense now that I've read A Court of Mist and Fury. I think that's the second book? Yeah. But I didn't like his character at all. I found him just bland and male. Like, just the typical Sarah J. Maas male. And that really sucked, but you know what? Like, book 2 fixed that. Like, there's no problems now. We're all good. So, yeah. It was probably the most enjoyable book of January, other than A Court of Mist and Fury, I think is the second one. I could be wrong. I think I'm right. The second book I read this month was An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson? I think it's Rogerson. And I hated this book. I hardly got through it. I was questioning not even finishing it at all. And I did, but the romance was terrible. The main male character, I don't even remember his name. He was just so boring. And also, the romance came out of nowhere. Like, I remember reading the scene where she was painting him, and she was just like, oh, I think I'm in love with him. And I was like, why? You haven't even said that many words to each other. Why are you in love with him? And then the whole, like, book was a back and forth of, like, am I in love with him or am I not? And I just hated it. I hated everything about it. And, like, having just read A Court of Thorn and Roses, she felt like a Feyre ripoff done in the worst way. And I don't even remember either of their names. Was it Elizabeth? Or is that her other book? I don't know. I didn't like it. It was bad. And I hardly finished it. I put it down for like 5 days in the last 10 pages because I was like, I don't even care what happens at the end. Like, the magic was kind of cool and that was a thing that I had, but like, it just wasn't worth it. So, the third book I read, which was for university, was The Crystal World by J.G. Ballard. I'm in a climate fiction class, so we're reading a lot of stuff about, like, climate change and pandemics and stuff, which is fun for this year. I'm enjoying it. I had mixed feelings about this book. I didn't like the main character, which is a problem for me because I am a character reader. Everything I read, I have to like the character to like the book. Even if I don't necessarily agree with the character's actions, I still have to like them in some way. The main character of this book was a dick. He was gross and weird, and he fetishized leprosy. And I found that really uncomfortable, and I didn't like it very much, as most people who see leprosy wouldn't. And honestly, I didn't like it. I didn't like any of the characters. The world was very interesting. The idea of like walking on crystal glass was really, like, that was really pretty image, and like I enjoyed that part of the book. But the characters were so unlikable that I just barely got through it. Like, I was listening to an audiobook and it was driving me insane, and I hated it. I hated all the characters. But, you know what? I got through it. The world was cool. It was pretty. It was a cool thought. You know what? I ended it. Like, whatever. And then I read At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. And if you can't tell, I haven't had a very good reading month because I also hated this book. This book was so boring. It started off with a really interesting premise that got me like through the first like 50 pages within like an hour. Like, I was really enjoying it. I was like, whoa, this is gonna go somewhere. And then it didn't. The remainder of the book, after like about 60, 70 pages, is this main guy we know basically nothing about, so again, my character reader thing was like, why should I care if this guy dies? Basically, it was just like, well, these tunnels are spooky. And then he said that about 500 times throughout the rest of the book, and that was it. And I was like, so you're not going to talk about the campsite and all the murdered people and, you know, the whole the thing situation going on? Like, none of that's important. So yeah, didn't like it, give it 2 stars. It was a bad time, didn't enjoy it. And so yeah, if you like rocks, you might like this. That's all I can give it, if you like rocks. Another book that I read for my university class after I read At the Mountains of Madness was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, I believe. But I read the comic version, and I forget who it was adapted by. But this was pretty good. I gave it a middle grade. I enjoyed it. It was fairly interesting to see how this world evolved, and also fairly frightening, because this world is extremely similar to the world we're living in today. And it was written in 1994, I believe? And yeah, it was very uncomfortable to read, especially knowing that the world took place in 2024, and there was a pandemic that started like 3 years ago in this story, and like all this shit went down, and like, I was just like, that's a bit uncomfy. And in my university class, actually, one of the questions was like, well, is this predicting a future for us? And I was like, I don't want to think about that. So I didn't. Good story. I liked the main character, although I feel like the comic didn't really do her justice. I read a bit of the actual book, and I found her way more interesting in that one. In the comic, it felt like she just flipped between apathy and hyper-empathy, as she calls it, constantly. So the book follows this girl named Lauren, who's like kind of flip-flopping between like religion and like trying to find a way to handle how the world is changing around her. And so she's going through a very difficult time, and like that's understandable, but at the same time, like, she seemed completely apathetic to everything that was happening around her, even though she was like, well, I gotta survive, and I gotta get myself to survive, and I would leave my family and go find a different life. But then at the same time, she's like, well, my family is all that matters to me, and it was very confusing. Her motivations never really made sense to me, and I think that's the comic's fault, and not necessarily the character. The comic didn't really do a good job at portraying anything that these characters wanted. The art wasn't very good, it looked very messy, and it made the hyper-empathy thing very hard to understand. And I didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping I would. I was actually really excited for this book, as I am excited to read Dead Astronauts by Jeff Vandermeer, which I'm also reading for the class that I'm in. And I read Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer when I was in grade 10, and I really enjoyed it, so I'm really looking forward to that. And finally this month I read A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas to continue on the series of ACOTAR, and I loved it. I loved it so much more than the first book. I found the relationship between Tamlin and Feyre very enjoyable, like that tension that was put in the middle of it. I love Rhysand. He gave so much more to this romance than Tamlin ever did. I like the idea of this trauma that's going on in Feyre, the need to escape all these feelings that she's having. Like, that was just so well done. And it was really sad because I saw someone else read it on my Goodreads and was saying that they hated it. And I was like, no, like, it's actually really good. And I know it's like a trend to hate on Sarah J. Maas right now, but like, her characters are really good. And like, the way she writes friendships and the way she writes relationships, like, you really feel for the things these characters are going through. So that was just something that was really important to me, and I needed Feyre right now because I'm going through a lot personally, and just the things that she was going through and the things that she was saying, like, they really spoke to me a lot through this book. So I loved it. 5 out of 5, like, had a really, really good time with this book, and I think I would read it again, like, in an instant. Like, I loved it. So, yeah, that was what I read in January. I know it's not as much as most people have been reading, but I am very busy with university and life stuff and existing, and, you know, that's a lot. Like, you can't really expect much of a 18-year-old person going on 19. Like, I can't just read all the time as much as I wish I could. But for next month, I am definitely planning on reading as much as I can. I'm going to be reading the rest of the ACOTAR series. I'm hoping to, anyways. I'm also planning on reading some more of Tamsin Muir's stories. I think she has a book called The Mysterious Case of Dr. Sex, which is about the Sixth House from the Locked Tomb trilogy, which I'm really interested in because I really like the Sixth House. So I'm thinking about reading that as well. There's a couple more books that I'm looking forward to. Kings of the Wild, I think I'm also going to read in February. And maybe some more stupid romance books. I also read From the Blood and Ash this month. Didn't feel like it was worth bringing up with all the other shitty books that I've read this month. That one would top it. But that I didn't want to bring it up because I only got like 30 pages in, and I was like, wow, look at this bastardized resend. So yeah, next month I'm planning on reading some better books, because god, this month was bad for books. So anyways, thank you for watching my January wrap-up. This is the first time I've done one of these, so it was probably a mess. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!